challenge against Illinois' firearm owner's ID card moving forward, and it's something that I think is really going to get to the crux of the question of, is that FOID card constitutional? I chatted with Gun Save Life Executive Director John Boch late last week about the latest in this case, and you can find that story at thecentersquare.com. Again, go to thecentersquare.com with Illinois in Focus Daily. You can stay up to date with the latest, including the latest in gun ban litigation, as we see how these cases are progressing and where they're going. As we've been tracking, of course, the challenge against Illinois' gun and magazine ban. That is coming up with the 30-day window. September 20th was the end of that hearing of the bench trial on the merits. So, 30 days from there, we're expecting to see some kind of updates from Cook County or from the Southern District of Illinois federal judge Stephen McGlynn. But you've got other cases as well, including the FOID card case, which there have been multiple FOID card cases. And in particular, an appeals court has denied delaying Illinois' firearm owner ID challenge. So go to thecentersquare.com. You'll be able to see this headline here. Appeals court denies delaying Illinois' FOID challenge. State Supreme Court denies the ammo tax appeal. We talked with Todd Vandermeide about the ammo tax appeal last week, but I wanted to share the conversation I had with Gun Save Life. So an appellate court has denied another attempt by the state to delay a case challenging the FOID card. Gun Save Life, they sued the state alleging the FOID card's unconstitutional. Now, last year, a Sangamon County judge sided with the state, ruling that the law is constitutional. So that was the district state-level court in Sangamon County. And then it went to the appeals court. So Gun Save Life, they appealed, and since then, the state has motioned for 3 different extensions to file responses, and those extensions were granted. Now, in September, the state motioned to pause the case. So that's September of this year. They motioned to pause the case in order to await the outcome of a different firearm owner ID card challenge in front of the Illinois Supreme Court. Now, the appeals court said that the state has already had enough delays and that the case they're waiting for is not similar to the Gun Save Life challenge of the FOID card. I believe that they're actually looking to say, hey, the Illinois Supreme Court has a case that challenges the FOID card because somebody was in a vehicle and they didn't have the proper documentation and they had a firearm with them. So we want to wait for the outcome of that. Well, the judge in this case, or at least the appeals court, the state appeals court in Illinois, said that that's not even the same case, and Gun Save Life is looking to challenge the constitutionality of the FOID card. So here's what the court said. Similarly, the state's brief in this case cited the standards for a facial challenge in a single paragraph and its standing section, and defendant still has not identified a specific set of circumstances when the FOID card act would be constitutional. Now, oral arguments have been set in this case in the appellate court for November 14th. I chatted with Gun Save Life Executive Director John Boch last week before the weekend, and he shared with us some of his thoughts about where we're at in this case and the importance of this case. So here's John Boch.
Well, it really doesn't matter what happens here in the Fourth Circuit. It's going to get appealed up to the Illinois Supreme Court either way, no matter who wins or who loses. And the Illinois Supreme Court's going to get a chance at that point to evaluate. Question is whether or not they'll follow the Bruin precedent and the rule of law. And of course, under Bruin, we know that there were no FOID cards in 1791, so there's no history to support the FOID card whatsoever. And ultimately, we're going to prevail. The question is whether or not the Illinois Supreme Court will do the right thing, or if we have to go to the U.S. Supreme Court to make this happen.
So obviously, this can go all the way up to the Illinois Supreme Court, which for some reason has historically really not addressed the issue of the constitutionality of the FOID card, right? We had a separate FOID card challenge that Attorney Thomas Magg brought forward that the Illinois Supreme Court a week and a half ago ruled they're vacating the case. They ultimately said that, there were some questions about standing, and so they didn't get to the crux of the issue of, is the FOID card unconstitutional? by requiring an individual to pay to get a card in order for them to exercise a fundamental constitutional civil liberty, the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's right there, right after the First Amendment right of, peaceable assembly, right, to practice whatever religion you want, free speech, free press. So it's a constitutional fundamental right. You don't have to have a card to say, hey, I'm going to, be with this group, or you don't have to have a card to say, hey, I'm going to be speaking my mind, or you don't have to have a card to say, hey, I'm going to, be a member of the press. Depending on where you're at, actually. I do have to have a press badge to get into certain areas, but if I wanted to print anything, I wouldn't necessarily have to have any kind of ID. So regardless, this idea of requiring a ID to simply exercise your constitutional rights, the Illinois Supreme Court really has not touched this. So I think that's why John Boch from Gun Save Life is saying they're going to go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. So if the Illinois Supreme Court doesn't do anything with this and they punt, it's possible you could take this as a constitutional question to the U.S. Supreme Court. Here's Boch talking more about this case.
They have a tendency, as you well know, to sidestep the issue wherever they can to avoid making a proper decision. But ultimately, they don't have a lot of choice here. They're limited options, and anything short of them striking the FOID card down will result in us filing an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, and I think they know that it's going to lose there, and they would hopefully prefer not to be reversed by the U.S. Supreme Court. But I don't know. After all, J.B. Pritzker spent millions of dollars to put 2 of the 7 justices on the court, and we'll have to wait and see how the rest of the court looks at this, if they look at it per the rule of law as an inferior court, or if they want to play stupid with it. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go with the stupid option.
Again, Boch mentions the fact that on the Illinois Supreme Court, Governor J.B. Pritzker gave $1 million to each of 2 Supreme Court justice candidates in the 2022 election, and those candidates did not recuse themselves in cases where Pritzker was a defendant being sued because of laws that he himself signed into law, like the challenge of Illinois' gun ban enacted in January of 2023. So we'll see what ultimately happens with this case, but clearly the appellate court no longer giving the state any more delays. They've got a November 14th hearing that they're going to do in the appellate court for state court on the constitutionality focused on the Bruin standards of text, history, and tradition. Was there, in the founding of this country, when the Second Amendment was ratified, a requirement for individuals to have their state police issue a firearm owner ID card in order for them to exercise their rights to keep and bear arms, to be able to buy ammunition, to be able to buy a firearm, to be able to even to possess a firearm in the state of Illinois? Here's John Boch with some final thoughts.
I think that's about it. I would just thank the National Rifle Association Institute for Legislative Action for helping us with this, and also our Gun Save Life members for being members and helping facilitate this whole process. Ultimately, it's our members that make us strong, and with the backing and support of the National Rifle Association's Institute for Legislative Action, we're here probably 2, maybe 3 years away from getting rid of the FOID card altogether, and boy, won't that be a glorious and momentous day.
So thanks to John Boch for letting me chat with him last week. Gun Save Life, a litigant in a case challenging the firearm owner ID card, one of several challenges against the FOID card that are out there. Again, the MAG case that the Supreme Court in Illinois vacated a couple of weeks ago. You've got another case that's pending in front of the Illinois Supreme Court, but now you have this case from Gun Save Life making its way through the court system, and a November hearing in the appellate court. Then after that, it would go to the Illinois Supreme Court, but as we heard Boch say, he's ready to go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court with this case. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Thank you so much for being part of the program, and join us each and every weekday morning live as we give you Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and get the podcasts anywhere you get your podcast with Illinois in Focus.